Kettle Blow One here, back with more from an Immortal God and His Destined ones. Back with Kazehana. Kazehana could neither believe nor comprehend anything she had just witnessed just now. Probably like anyone else reading the story, Lolz. So many things that she wouldn't have thought possible had just occurred ever since she had regained consciousness, like a shitting girl inside of me. You shitting me? Ye. Yicky, 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 yicky. An image of a burrito appeared in Kazehana's mind. John Balby, Skeeter song, the author of this story's version. There's a skeeter on my Peter, whack it off. Hee hee. There's a skeeter on my Peter, whack it off. Hee hee. There's a dozen on my cousin, can't you hear them bastards buzzing? There's a skeeter on my Peter, whack it off. Song end. That must be it. A dream. It has to be a dream or something. She thought out loud in her delusional state of Floridian mind, as she could totally believe what she just saw right now, much like how Hercule couldn't back in his early years when he was alive. There's no possible way that I can fly like a squirrel into a tree. Unfortunately for Kazehana, she became a brick. Goku walked over to her and ripped her head off. Next, he tore her stomach open and stuffed the severed head inside of it. Then the Saiyan God vomited wet phosphorus before summoning a massive meteor from space to kill everyone on the planet for no reason whatsoever. Upon hearing the cries of protest from the eternally damned, Goku punched it back into space. It then destroyed planet Mercury, killing the fuck out of it and throwing the entire solar system out of whack, thus causing incredible ecological change on planet Earth. Every dick in the divine universe exploded, and inside every dick was a testicle with a mouth full of pins that sang of immortal beings' flippant precipice with the perforating, invisible werewolves suffering in a higher plane of existence. Then Goku threw a massive ki blast at the Earth, and the planet threw up, soaking Goku in planetary vomit. Actually, she unknowingly spoke these thoughts loudly enough for the man in her supposed, quote, dream, unquote, to let out a questioning sound before turning around to look at her with a confused expression plastered onto his face. Yeep! Kazehana let out an uncharacteristic squeak upon realizing her mistake. Goku was not a pretzel. As he walked up to her, she suddenly regained her courage, since it was, quote, only a dream, unquote. She got right up in his face, and she tried to confide her confidence unto him in the art of tree humping. Soy sauce was then poured onto her scalp. Her head then turned into a computer screen with a blue Microsoft Windows error message on it and caught fire. The fire was doused by someone slamming the bottom of a metal fire extinguisher over her flaming computer screen of a head. Yeah, you heard me. You're just a dream. Nothing more than a figment of my imagination. Unless, of course, you can prove me wrong, she said to him with a smirk, as an image of a cat being swung around in circles while it held onto a moving fan popped into her head. This pissed Goku off, so he hit Kazehana. When she started crying, Goku raped her. When she yelled at Goku for being an insensitive bastard, He drove Kazehana away, leaving the Saiyan god to wallow in his own loneliness and misery. However, he reminded himself that his life was still better than the book-movie series known as Twilight. Good times that never actually happened. I used to be a seagull. Seagull? Don't you mean gullible? Goku asked me. Gullible! Anyways, Goku decided to humor Kazehana. He walked over and pinched her cheek. She yelped in surprise and glared at him with a "what was that for" look on her face. She then somehow shot a chore whore out of her ass before drowning her in the ocean and looking back at Goku expectantly. Noticing that she didn't see where he was going with this, he said, "I pinched you and you felt pain, so you aren't asleep." Upon this sudden realization, her skin suddenly became so white that it matched the color of the non-tainted by piss snow that coated the island, despite the fact that it hadn't snowed at all. Does not compute. Oh well, I don't care. Lolz. His expression seemed to soften as he looked at her before softly saying, "I know why you softly killed those soft people. You just wanted to protect your soft children, right? Just softly promise me that you and the others won't ever softly kill again unless there's no other way out, okay? Yay? Softy, soft, soft, softity, soft, soft." At this, an image of a burrito with Goku's head sticking out of one end appeared in her mind. Dun dun dun! Then her eyes shot wide open upon hearing the kind words, "He isn't going to blow the world to bits, tits," she screamed to herself inside her head, now looking at Goku in a new light. How is it possible for someone to be so calm and compassionate after knowing everything the five of us have done to donate the death toll of Ishka's Basa blah 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 blah? And why am I reacting? Her body then froze as she came to a startling realization. "I was frozen today." Your body didn't literally freeze upon coming to a startling realization, Kazehana. Stick with the script. "Aren't you the one making me say all of this, author?" Kazehana asked me. "Yes, and I find it hilarious." "Ah!" Kazehana shouted, followed by her head exploding. "For the convenience of the story, I'm going to have Goku revive her," and he refused. So, instead, I shoved some enchanted drugs down her throat to do the job. As a result, a monkey came over and sat atop her neck. The monkey then transformed into an exact replica of her head. It then slid into place and attached itself to her neck. She was now whole again, and incredibly high. 1 hour later, and action! And why am I reacting? Her body froze that very moment as she came to a startling realization. "Oh shit, I'm reacting to him. My destined one, my Ashikabi, is this dude? If this isn't a dream, then I must be in heaven," Kazehana thought to herself as she drooled tree sap and let bliss overtake her. Then she took an arrow to the eye. A bowl of ice cream is not snow. Just then, Goku noticed that the Sakurai's heartbeat had suddenly increased dramatically, as her breathing had also become heavy and labored. Her cheeks were becoming more red, with each passing second, and her eyes were now glazed over with a glossy coating. Strange, but nothing really seemed wrong with her. Even so, he was still concerned about her. Therefore, he snapped his fingers, and his legs turned into arms with hands and fingers. He then scuttled over to her on his dick by bouncing on it at extremely high speeds at a few centimeters off of the ground per second with each bounce. I have to strategize. Hey, miss, are you feeling all... Before the Super Saiyan God could finish his question, Kazehana suddenly started to grow wings as she cut him off and pulled herself into a passionate kiss with him, which usually happens when trying that on an immovable object, minus the wings, of course. Kazehana cried out in pleasure. The ecstasy doubled and redoubled in her mind, like a pile of fissile material reaching critical mass. Neutrons traveling at the speed of lust collided with sensual nuclei, splitting them into two smaller, slightly less sensual nuclei, but also releasing more lusty neutrons, which then went on to impact additional nuclei. The chain reaction continued until the number of fissile sensual nuclei fell below the level necessary to sustain the reaction. Just then, it started to rain. Minaka and Takami were both scared shitless for two reasons. First, rain meant that an army of homeless people were sure to follow soon after, so that they would be able to wash their disease-ridden asses off. The second reason was because man-eating tapeworms would always rise up from a small ring around the island whenever it rained. The tapeworms would then proceed to eat everything but the homeless. In other words, the two humans were fucked on both parts. Goku then shoved a flaming rat with pie in its asshole into her mouth before resuming the kiss, which was passionate, like slurping up lemons with tongues of water hoses and metallic s'mores. Wait, is this normal or abnormal? I know the reaction depends on the person's strength, but why does my pleasure still continue to rise? His DNA, it's too much. I'm gonna... These were Kazehana's last thoughts before she put a bucket over her head, and her mind went blank. Song Jizz in My Pants by Lonely Island. My Ashikabi! As it is written, only you can eat my shit, you terrible butt faggot. Goku, who decided to pretend he didn't hear that last sentence of hers, heard the woman, random line break, Lolz, suddenly scream out with all her might as she wrapped her toothy, shit-covered nipples surrounded by nuclear pubic hairs of the Holy Crab in Heaven's Light spectrum, error 404, around his waist, and released her load of both laundry and cum from Karasuba's spare sword. After shooting out from the sword, Kazehana's load then made a beeline for her nostrils and entered them before exiting out of her mouth. From there, her load slithered into her vagina before shooting out of her asshole and finally landing onto Goku's gi. Kazehana had already considered this and thought, why not? Why not, as in the Pokemon? What did she have to lose? Aside from her virginity, dignity, or maybe her life. Heck, it might be more pranking. Watching them suffer. Watching them bleed. When Batman walked into the store, he was immediately greeted by his host, who was chanting in Arabic and fornicating with his sacrifices of human flesh to Allah and shouting, "Yahi, you're finally here!" I, my met, birth father angry, so stubbed to death too. So I'm that spoopy. They're in, and I left the world. At age 22, I met my birth parents. My birth father looked angry, so I stabbed both of my birth parents to death. I now keep their dead bodies in my closet, so I know that I'm spoopy. Their jaws fell off in affirmation, and I left to face the world. Hurled. Ever since the racist space monkeys invaded, life in town has changed a lot. The hobos, for one, are much more rabid. The other day, I saw a hobo raping a tranny on her belly button. I didn't think that was possible, so I tried it on my ex-girlfriend against her will that night. It didn't work for me, so I'm going to have to do some more research. Luckily for me, today was a hobo union protest day, so they weren't on the job. I got to work and started shooting. It was a camera, not a gun. Now I see how readers might get confused there. At first, things were pretty tame. There was a bit of eyeball penetration as well as some knife lacerations here and there. Things immediately changed when Black Man, aka Blackius Manuel, literally named Black Man, took a massive football-sized dump that was as hard as my dick and almost half the size. When it was halfway out of his anus, he pressed his butt cheeks against the blonde bitch's pussy before fucking her with his half-shot turd. Her remaining eye went as wide as a dinner plate as a result. The black guy then inserted a sparkler into the hole located at the tip of his dick and set it off. The director was throwing red, white, and blue bowling balls at them. It was a very patriotic experience. Blood, jizz, shit, and sparks were flying everywhere. Bowling balls were fracturing bones, while fireworks set fire to the whole orphanage that we were filming in. I would love to show it to everyone, but all the Super 8 film I had used was burned up in the madness. I'm thinking of moving to digital. There was good and bad news about the orphanage fire. The good news was that one of the kids had known that we were shooting softcore porn there. The bad news was that everyone died in a fire, completely unrelated. While I don't remember the full details of the firefighters' work that night, I do, however, remember seeing a strange football-shaped object flying out of one of the windows before landing on top of a nearby ice cream shop's giant ice cream cone sign. The next day, they announced a new flavor. Out of film for the day, I decided to head home early. First, though, I stopped at a local dollar store. They were selling DIY fracking tools used in the olden days to dig for natural gas. And I'd been hoping to frack some dirty land. I wanted to shove my massive rod deep inside that hole and just ooze goo all up in there in the hopes that maybe, just maybe, I'll get something to squirt back in return. That's when I noticed that they were selling discount abortion kits. I said fuck it to the frack and decided that doing some good old black market work would be a better way to spend my weekend. After an intense purchase at the register, I went home for the day. The next day, I heard a knock on my door, so I answered it. There were two police officers covered in naked standing there, polishing their rifles. One held a photo of Black Man. "Have you seen one, Blackius Manuel?" he asked. "Yes, no, I had to think fast, so I pulled out a giant Nerf disc launcher loaded with donuts and fired it between them. 3 donuts landed a few hundred feet down the street. Fetch, piggies! Driven mad with lust for the gooey, doughy goodness, the cops frantically dashed after the donuts. I swiftly pulled out my toaster launcher and started blasting them with Herbie Hancock's 83 classic CDs. This frightened the piggies. They then ran away, leaving a trail of diarrhea behind them like a snail trail. I closed the door before setting my toaster launcher to play a random song by the band known as Disturbed. Then Black Man and I played a game where he was a cotton-picking slave and I was his white master, only the other way around. However, we didn't have any cotton, so I went to go steal some from the neighbors. Since I couldn't find any actual cotton, I came back with an urn full of the ashes of the neighbors' deceased relatives. As a reward for being an obedient white servant to my black master, Black Man made us both ash drinks to enjoy. Just then, some hobos smelled the fart that I'd just released, and their eyes were suddenly on me with lust like a child in puberty when talking to his 4th grade teacher, Miss Gualvetra. Her tits were like magnets for eyes. They were always just right there on her chest, so round and booby. I wanted nothing more than to just take her there in front of everybody in the spelling bee. She would be all like, "Your word is albatross," and I would be all like, ALB, and then my 4th grade erection would find its way up her into her labia majora. I mean, it would have if she weren't a tranny and also a fag. However, fags really sat well with me. Still, can you believe that we have fags in Congress? Hell, we voted a black guy into the White House. It's the White House, WHITE House. This country is on a fast track to Uranus, just like my anus, unless I got out of there quickly. So I did.